I think it goes blank for you before it goes blank for me. Oh, there you go. I've started. Brilliant. Wunderbar, wunderbar. Okay. So today we're looking at economic and social conditions and why they were vital to the French Revolution. And what I want to start with is the Flower Wars of 1775. So you'll know that the French Revolution occurs in 1789, which is 14 years later. But these Flower Wars, or Flower War, which actually aren't really aptly named because they weren't actually a war. They were just a series of riots, but 300 riots. So that's a lot of riots, and it's quite an exciting period of history. This is a pre-warning for King Louis that he needs to make sure that he gets his state organized. Okay, so the Flower War refers to a wave of riots from April to May in 1775 in eastern and western parts of the Kingdom of France. Okay, it follows an increase in grain prices. Now, the reason that we have this is because Turgot, who was essentially the Minister of Finances, and that's a picture of him down the right here, he had deregulated the price of bread. Now, this is really, really bad, okay? Because what that gave was businessmen who were very callous the opportunity to short stock. So this is something that famously has happened in Russia and the Ukraine when they want to get better prices for bread, because those areas of the world are known as the breadbasket. They say, oh, we've had really bad weather and there's not as much bread. And so what they do, they make sure bread is in short supply. And when something's in short supply, this is the law of economics, okay, then it goes up in price. Supply and demand. I'm sure you're aware of this. So when Turgot deregulated the price of bread, because it was under state control to make sure that businessmen didn't do that. But Turgot wanted to have a more laissez-faire policy, a more leave-alone policy, and let economics take care of itself. It was a massive disaster, a huge disaster. So it created a huge crisis in the Ancien regime. And Turgot, what he had to do was send the police in and basically create a police state. All right. So when we're looking at the Flower Wars, this almost erupted into a revolution in itself. It was very, very close. And as I said, for King Louis, this was a great warning. So there's a good source for this here. Okay, so I've put in a good source there, which attests to the information which you see in this paragraph. Now, there was a conspiracy theory which emerged amongst the French public, and that was that King Louis the 16th had essentially created a pacte de famine. Okay, so sections of the French public thought that King Louis the 16th had orchestrated this on purpose, that he had got Turgot to change the price of bread so that he could kill off some of his nation. So it's a conspiracy theory. Now, I personally don't think it has any basis in truth because it's nonsensical, but it represents the anger of the mob. Okay, it represents the anger of the mob. Now, Turgot's reputation is essentially ruined through this, and he comes out and he says, "Ne vous mêlez pas de pain." All right, do not meddle with the price of bread. All right, so his experiment in changing the economics of France, because remember, France was saddled with debt, okay, like billions of livres of debt. And so because of that, he wanted to alleviate that situation. And if you could deregulate the price of bread and increase profit and therefore taxation, you could get France out of debt. So I understand why he was trying to do it, but it was a huge failure. Now, there's some really great facts here. Okay, so we've got some. I know there's a lot of writing there, but just allow me to explain. Okay, so look, over 17 days, there was 180 conflicts in Paris alone. Okay, and one source, Cynthia Bouton, says that there was 313 riots. Okay, now sometimes interpreted as anarchic movements. So there was a political movement of anarchists in France at this time, which is really interesting because it's pre-Marxist philosophy. But you can see that there's an anger swelling in the nation. 300 riots in such a short amount of time surely attest to that. Okay? So, and certain sections of society who previously held economic and social power were attacked. So victims could be merchants or farmers or common direct representatives of power, like the police, profit millers, councillors of parliament. Okay, so the power structures of France were actually under attack. Now this is starting to look like a revolution. Okay, but King Louis dealt with it swiftly. Okay, there was 25,000 soldiers, arrests, hangings of the rioters, making examples of people. Okay, and also the clergy were used by King Louis XVI to say, look, we're putting bread back under state control and the prices will be once again under state control. So he effectively dealt with the flour wars, but it was he created his own problem by allowing Turgot to deregulate the price of bread. I mean, what do you think was going to happen? Merchants are always going to look for a quick buck. The profit motive is essentially there because human greed is so voracious. So it's a problem he created, but he deals with it quite quickly. All right. Now, here's some good facts. Okay, and this is why. Sorry to go back. You don't meddle with the price of bread, because actually, between 1788 and 1789, the price of bread shot up by 88%. All right, and from 1741 to 1785, there was an increase in the cost of living. All right, in 1789, there was a 25% fall in real wages and an 88% increase in the price of bread. And it's thought actually that this is created by an eruption in Iceland. That there was a volcanic eruption in Iceland, and it changed the weather patterns for years on the European continent. So it's quite interesting. You can see how like there's a kind of geographic cause to the French Revolution, or a natural like volcanic. I don't know. I'm not a geographer, but there's certainly according to weather patterns there. So it's quite interesting to see how you've got natural causes rather than just human causes there. Okay, so I know there's a lot of stats there, but you've got again you've got a good source to refer these statistics to, and these statistics are important. These social and economic conditions are important. A Marxist historian, not a Marxist per se, but a Marxist historian, would look at these social economic causes and think that basically the framework of the other causes really work within this. Remember, at the same time that you've got this kind of this hardening of conditions for the poorest sections of French society. I mean, spending 88% of your wages on just food alone leaves nothing for anything else that you may need. And what if you get laid off from work? What are you going to do then? You see, by the price of bread being so extortionate, 88% of a man's wages, that leaves a very fine line into severe poverty. He's got to clothe himself. He's got to live in a house, okay, with some kind of shelter. Got to provide for his family. Okay, it's a very, very bad situation when if I spent 88% of my salary on food, how would I be able to have a mortgage? How do I be able to afford transport into work? Do you see, these social and economic conditions are hugely significant in causation to the French Revolution. And what's really interesting is at the same time that you've got this hardening of social economic conditions, you've got a demographic shift in education in the Enlightenment. Okay, you've got 50% of French men / women being able to read. Okay, and of course, that statistic would be higher amongst the bourgeois who are conscious of what's going on. Amongst the peasantry, and they can make political pamphlets about what's going on, okay, with these social conditions. So you've got essentially what is like a perfect storm: hardening social economic conditions, and an increase in literacy and Enlightenment thought, the ability to criticize and communicate what's going on, pamphlets going out. You've got Marat on the ground. We need to get the palpitating hearts of the aristocrats. We need to just execute. If we execute 500 to 600 aristocrats, we can change French society for the better. You've got some real communication going on at this point. I'm sorry, going on to the next slide now. So to compound matters even further, you have this ferme générale, okay? And yeah, all right. So the ferme générale essentially divided France into different regions, and you had these parlements. Okay, so we've got a nice intertwining of factors here. So the ferme générale was part of the ancien regime, and it was essentially a taxation regime. And here you can see all the different taxation that people paid, but the most unpopular tax was the Jebel tax, and it was extremely complicated. And there were look at the price disparities. The salt price in Paris was 30 times higher in Brittany, okay, and therefore led to smuggling. But then smugglers would be like a black market, but they would be obviously hugely punished. Now, this is the source for this information here at the bottom. Okay, but all right, you've got the price of bread going up. More people can read. You've got unfair taxation. You've got regional inequalities. You've got the ancient regime in itself, with the clergy and the aristocrats hardly paying any tax, and the third estate paying huge amounts of tax. You've got regional inequalities. This is such, you can see, it's so clear to see where this French Revolution comes from. And King Louis created his own problem in this sense, because he allowed the Parlement, so not parliament as we'd think, regional. Basically, he had devolved his power. Really, even though King Louis is an absolute monarch, he creates a power vacuum of his own reign because he's so ineffective, just so ineffective. So what he does, he was designed to be loved by the people. So people wanted to have kind of regional, the aristocrats, and the public feeling was that by having regional parliament, people could sort out their own problems regionally. So he reinstated the parliaments, and he said, "It may be considered political unwise, but it seems a general wish, and I want to be loved." I mean, what's a bunch of nonsense? So the ancien regime in itself is a cause of its own downfall, because it leads to ineffective leaders on the basis of their genetic lottery having this absolute power. In King Louis XVI's case, he devolves power, but he devolves power in a chaotic way, which leads to regional inequalities. Everything the man does backfires. Okay, everything he does backfires. And again, here is a link here to this quote which he made. Okay, so I think you've got quite a good idea now of the social and economic conditions and how crucial a causation they were for the French Revolution. And also what you've got is a nice symbiotic factors in here. Okay, you've got demographic shifts in literacy. You've got the ancient regime in itself linking to the economic and social conditions. You've got you've got King Louis's ineptitude within the ancient regime. So there's some really great ways of analysing history here through the social and economic conditions and this whole pre-warning of the Flower Wars. So I think you have a better understanding of social and economic conditions through this little mini lecture today. Okay, now I'm going to stop recording. Stop recording.